Hi, I'm Katie Hess with Liqui-Grow. Thanks for joining us today. We've put together a great presentation. We're calling it a Liqui-Grow Agronomy and Business Midsummer Update, and we're featuring Dr. Jake and his scouting report from the field. We've got some updates from the Tinsmans on the fertilizer industry and what to expect on pricing. We have our innovation lead, Chris Tinsman, to talk about our ExactStrip application, and myself to give you a brief update on the seed industry and what to expect this fall. So let's jump in and hear what Dr. Jake has to say.
But I think this sets the precedence for what you might expect from a foliar fungicide with corn prices where they are, and depending on what you pay for the product that you use. So we're not going to get into the early timing too much, just because we're past that and it's not very important for today's conversation. But when they did this, there were corn soybean rotation, continuous corn rotation, different tillage regimes, different levels of disease pressure. So this is what you might expect if you just go apply a fungicide without doing any scouting, without taking into account what the crop rotation is or what the tillage might be. Because, by the way, all those things can help you predict whether or not you might get a good response to a fungicide before the era of tar spot, right? So these were done in 2014, 2015, and tar spot really didn't come on the scene until 2016. So where we're at is we're at roughly $5 corn, or actually a little bit more than that. And we're paying roughly $25 to $30 per acre for our fungicide plus application cost. So before the era of tar spot, with corn prices where they are, we're looking at somewhere between a 60 and 70% probability of a return to a fungicide application without using any information, no scouting, no crop rotation, no tillage. We don't know any of that stuff. But on average, we would expect a 60 to 70% chance of at least returning our investment to a fungicide application. So you throw the risk of tar spot on top of that, and that really elevates the probability that you're going to see a nice, profitable response to a fungicide. So I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of set up where we're at in the absence of tar spot. It's corn, with corn prices being high, with the wet conditions we've had so far this growing season. Thankfully, we've had the wet conditions because many have not, but the consequence of wet conditions is foliar diseases. So, we're set up for diseases, period, let alone tar spot. So now I want to talk a little bit about tar spot. So, I've talked about this quite a bit, but this is the fun part because we're in the heat of the battle here, and we've learned quite a bit about tar spot, but yet still have a lot to learn about it. But we do have a pretty good idea of what kind of weather tar spot likes. So now let's talk about the weather that we've been having, and does tar spot like it? So first, let's talk about some modeling work that was done kind of at the beginning of the tar spot epidemic. So tar spot's been in South America for a long, long time. In fact, I think it was first identified, in the early 1900s. So this disease has been around for a long time in Mexico. This is not a new disease to the world anyway. And in Mexico, because it's been around so long, they have a pretty good idea of what weather conditions, make tar spot either bad or not so bad, right? So what they know from Mexico is that tar spot likes temperatures between 63 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. It likes above 75% relative humidity, and it likes monthly rainfalls of around 5.9 inches. So what these professors did is they took that average weather from Mexico, and they superimposed it on the Corn Belt. So the darker the red, the more similar the weather is to those places in Mexico where tar spot's a routine problem. So as you can see, we are right in the bullseye of the normal weather conditions. So our normal weather is very similar to the weather in Mexico that tar spot likes. So now let's talk about, are we having our normal weather, or are we having wetter conditions than normal, and what that may do to tar spot. So this is a This is a picture here or a couple graphs of the 7-day previous weather. And as you can see across all of our geography, we've averaged day and night temperatures. We've averaged somewhere between 70 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember, tar spot likes 63 to 72. So we're in that regime of what it prefers. If you look at the departure from the mean for the last 7 days, we've been about normal to slightly cooler than normal. So in very recent times, we may even be favoring the disease a little more than, you know, we're in the temperature conditions that it likes. Let's put it that way. So if you look at the 30-day forecast, where does that put us? Well, the 30-day forecast, or the 30-day, not the forecast, the 30-day look back at previous weather would suggest that since about the middle of June, our entire geography is averaged between 70 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, tar spot likes that 63 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And so we've had about normal weather if you look at the departure, normal temperatures if you look at the departure from the mean. What about rainfall? This would be the 30-day rainfall look back. So our geography in general has ranged between 4 and 6 inches of rain in the last month. Remember, tar spot does the best at about 6 inches of rain in a month. And if you look kind of at the core of the Quad Cities area and into Northwest Illinois, you know, that's where we're closer to that 6 inches of rain. As you move towards southeast Iowa, you know, they haven't had quite as much, although they've still been wetter as of late. And the same story would ring true for parts of north central Iowa. You know, they're around that 5-inch or so mark. And if you look at the departure from the mean, you can see that the Quad Cities area in Northwest Illinois has had about 125% of the normal precipitation. So all that goes to say is that we're having normal weather to perhaps definitely slightly wetter than normal in some parts of our geography. So if the normal weather favors tar spot in Mexico, if our normal weather favors tar spot like it does in Mexico, that suggests that we're going to have significant tar spot, particularly in those geographies where we've had wetter than normal weather. And remember, if you go back and think about what we might expect on average at $5 corn, without tar spot, we could expect a very good chance of a return on that investment. Now you throw tar spot on top of that, and I think I'm convinced that if I'm a farmer, this is something I need to do to protect yield. So this is the tar spotter model. If you don't know what the tar spotter model is, I would encourage you to look into it. It was basically a weather model developed by the University of Wisconsin. And all it's doing is basically just tracking for an individual location what I just talked about. It's also incorporating relative humidity, which is actually a very important factor that I did not get into. But basically, it's a weather model. It's modeling the weather at a specific location and telling you what the probability of you developing tar spot is. So if you look at the Quad Cities region, you know, we've got the tar spotter models telling us that in kind of the core of the Quad Cities area and then off in Northwest Illinois, there's a 98% chance. The way this model works is a little bit strange. So if it says a 98%, that means there's a 98% chance that you're greater than 50% likely to get tar spot. So it's telling you that there's a 100% chance that there's a greater than 50% chance of you getting tar spot. I know that's confusing, but that's the way the model works. If you go into north central Iowa, it's rated at a 93. I would say for north central Iowa, if you've had tar spot in a field historically, those predictions are probably right, but I know that it hasn't been as widespread in north central Iowa. At the same time, if you start working down to southeast Iowa, you know, now we're at a 73% chance, so things drop off a little bit, which would mirror the weather conditions that we've had. This is just a updated county map of the university confirmed counties with tar spot in 2022. I found tar spot in Scott County and Bureau County, which aren't on here because I didn't I didn't report it, but I can guarantee you there's more counties that have confirmed tar spot in 2022 than are on this map. But this is just what the university has confirmed. Already running out of time, so we're going to touch very quickly on products. So often the question I get is, are there standout products for tar spot? And when I talk about this data specifically, this was locations specifically focused on tar spot efficacy. Okay, so this is some university work, multi-location university work done back in 2021. The standout products in these studies were Delero Complete, Veltima, and Revitec. Also notice that, you know, other fungicides may not have done as well as those three, but they yielded significantly more. Well, they yielded more than the check in all cases. It's just that those three products I would call standout fungicide products. So the bottom line is, if I were a farmer, I would try to get my hands on one of those three. But if I couldn't get them, they're, you know, some options better than no option. Let's put it that way. Here's another multi-location fungicide efficacy trial, 10-location fungicide efficacy trial, not necessarily in tar spot environments, but there again, Veltima and Delero Complete to some extent did very well, particularly relative to the other fungicides. So here's another data set that suggests that those two products are, you know, standout fungicide products in general. Okay, I have just a couple minutes left here based on my timer, so I'm going to go through this very quickly. In fact, I'm not even going to go through every slide. So let's talk briefly about fungicide and insecticide on soybeans. So, you know, for quite some time, I've had very good results in my research plots regarding profitable yield increases from a fungicide insecticide. I've went through a lot of university and third-party data in my career, summarized a bunch of it. And those two things together, my personal experiences along with trying to understand what other folks have found, would suggest that, you know, oftentimes fungicide, insecticide are a profitable decision for soybean. But I'll support that with this very recent university survey, actually, that was done, very wide survey across the Corn Belt. There were a total of about 3,300 fields involved. So what they did is they basically sent farmers a questionnaire and asked farmers to fill out their management information along with a proven yield history. And so, you know, what that enabled the university folks to do that put this survey together is they were able to say, you know, over this large geography, what are the most important factors that are driving soybean yield? And the most important in-season factor that drove soybean yield in those studies was foliar fungicide and insecticide on soybean. So, you know, farmers that were using foliar fungicides and insecticides had 4.6 bushel per acre higher yields than farmers who were not using foliar fungicides and insecticides. This is a bunch of data I put together from different sources. Frankly, some of it's getting old. But what I came up with at the time is about 4.1 bushels. So 4.6, 4.1. My own personal experience would suggest somewhere in that ballpark also. So, you know, I think that foliar fungicides and insecticides on soybean is a practice, particularly at soybean prices where they are, that farmers need to be doing. It doesn't always follow the IPM strategy, but you know, one university professor that actually worked on some of this said, you know, it makes the farmer profitable. It's hard for me not to tell him to do it. I also think that you can help with resistance management, which we're not going to get into that in detail today, but using fungicide products with multiple modes of action can help these fungal diseases from becoming resistant to the fungicides themselves. So I think that's definitely something you need to consider doing if you're going to do this routinely. You need to be using a fungicide with multiple modes of action. We're particularly worried about frog eye leaf spot becoming resistant to strobilurin fungicides. So Katie, I do have more, but I'm 1 minute over, so I better shut her down.
Thanks, Jake. So For you folks on the call, Jake does this every Monday. He puts together something to share with our sales staff to educate them for this next week of, what's going on in the country. And then we try to take Jake and we condense him down to less than 3 minutes on the Liqui-Grow loop. So know that this is going on in the background, all of this extra detailed stuff. With that, I'd really like to introduce now the owners, Hov Tinsman and Scott Tinsman, and they're going to give us a update on the fertilizer market, which I know everybody's wondering what's going to happen there. So I'll turn it over to the two of you guys.
Okay, Katie, thank you. As most of you know, I'm Scott. The fertilizer and supply and pricing market today is really being driven as much by geopolitical winds as ever before. I'll try to outline what we've got going on as best I can, and we can field any questions that people have either during this call or later. If you look at potash, we have sanctions on Belarus potash and on Russian potash. There was a portion of that potash that came to the United States each year. This time around, it's going to have to come mostly from Canada or domestically. You also look at the Canadian supply as having to go to other areas of the world that have sanctions against Russia and Belarus for their actions in the war going on over there in the Ukraine. So the reality is, though potash is plentiful worldwide, there could be some spot tightness. I don't foresee that happening in the upper Midwest because we're so close to Canada, but there can be tightness and it does set the stage for very firm pricing. I do expect prices to be higher than last summer. Maybe they're a titch off of where they were this spring, but they're going to be close. Phosphate, as most of you know, Mosaic asked and received countervailing tariffs on phosphate against some of the Egyptian product 3 years ago. That product has been trading relatively flat at a high level, but relatively flat. I don't see any significant changes in that. Our phosphate comes from Florida. It's a liquid form. So we're 100% purchased for the 2023 year, and our pricing is basically going to be fixed because of contracts put in place, but there are escalators in that contract. Now comes the interesting one, and that is nitrogen. And that one is ultra confusing. Nitrogen's primary component is natural gas. Natural gas is obviously in short supply over in the European Union. The primary pipeline coming out of Russia is called Nord Stream. It's currently down for maintenance and it's supposed to come online on Thursday. Before it went down for maintenance, the US and other countries around the world put sanctions on Russia. Well, Russia returned the favor by cutting the amount of gas going into that pipeline, which is the primary pipeline for all of Europe. They cut the gas quantities by 60%. So yes, there's a question on whether that pipeline comes online come Thursday and at what level it comes in online. This is sort of a game of chicken that the countries are playing with each other. Natural gas is in very tight supply. We've been shipping out of Houston as many ships as we can over there to help them feed their industries. Their industries are competing in a shortage environment for that natural gas. So natural gas has been priced relatively high. Some fertilizer plants have been turned off because of it. I know the manufacturers of the fertilizer plants have gone to the governments to say, hey, we're a critical industry. We need to keep being supplied our share of natural gas. The chemical industry is doing the same thing. And quite frankly, homeowners saying, hey, we need natural gas for heating our homes this winter. So we do have an interesting squeeze play or potential squeeze play that could develop. On a positive note, yesterday morning, the U.S. Commerce Commission voted down countervailing tariffs on UAN. Manufacturer, primarily CF Industries, had gone to them and said, hey, we want a tariff on UAN coming into the country from other countries. And 6 months ago, it looked like those tariffs were going to go through. I do think it got some congressional pressure, particularly from Republican congressmen that said, hey, listen, we're we have all-time record high prices. And wait a minute, this is definitely the wrong time to put tariffs on, because the day they announced the potential for tariffs, UAN prices jumped by 100%. We do know that CF Industries Donaldsonville plant has been shipping large amounts of ammonia overseas because they can get a higher price than here in America. That is a little bit reason for concern, because normally those products would stay domestically. Domestically, production is about 12 million tons, and we use about 13.5 or 14 million tons. So we did not need to see these tariffs come online. The fact that they come offline means the price of UAN should abate just a little bit. But again, it depends if the natural gas gets to the European plants where they actually can do production. So, and natural gas, as many of you know, is really in the last 18 months, 2 years, gone from $2 a unit to this morning's price was $7.36. So it's bouncing all over the board, but it's generally speaking, it has not been below $5.50 in the last 6 months. So again, we have a lot of things going on, but that Russian war and the battle over natural gas in that Nord Stream pipeline is probably as much of a factor as any of them. And Hov, how's that work to the farm gate?
Good morning, Hov Tinsman, partner with Scott. Now that you have all the educational background information you possibly need to know, you're all market savvy and can make the right decisions. Anyway, let's go back to potash where Scott started. As it relates to 2022, we had all the potash storage that we needed to take care of the fall and then some. As we go into 23, starting this fall, we already have plans in place. We've already received a bunch of the potash that we would need for this fall. And by the middle of September, we expect to have 100% of what would be necessarily used between now and the end of December. So supply of potash should be solid. As Scott mentioned, since all of ours comes from Canada, we suspect there will be no hiccups with the remaining supply that we need to receive, but we've already been receiving stuff here just this month in July. As he also mentioned, as it relates to phosphate, we store in excess of 100% of what we use for the fall. Those contracts are already written, products are already moving. We would expect to have everything we need for the fall for phosphate by the end of September. So having said all that, that means supply will be awesome. It should be able to cover anything that's necessary. It is true that we are staring, depending upon rate per acre, at about a $30 price increase over a year ago in the fall, but prices have fractionally fallen off of their high of the spring. And when we look at $1 a bushel more for corn and $2.50 a bushel more for beans from July 20th to July 20th, we suspect that the economic situation still should be favorable to consider what you're going to plan for 2023. As it relates to nitrogen, it is a moving target. We know that you're interested in talking about it. We know that you're interested in purchasing as soon as you can. The market is unclear where it's going to necessarily be headed, but just know that whenever possible, we will basically be able to offer something at a secure price that's competitive against any of our alternative nitrogen sources, that being ammonia or urea, but it is still up in the air in terms of when that's done. Potentially, based on what you heard from Scott, it could be similar in terms of volatility to a year ago, but it actually could be less volatile than a year ago. But just know that everything is starting at a higher level compared to a year ago.
So just for everybody to know, I often, when I see these guys in the hallway, I think, do I want to ask them how their day is going or not? And how much time do I have? Because these are the conversations that they want to get into. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So you can see they did this all without notes today too. So this is what they do all day, every day for us. And could you maybe spend just a minute talking about what you're just coming off of on the fungicide piece and securing supply for these guys?
Thanks a lot. Sure. There's a lot of similarities between the fertilizer products as well as it relates to fungicide. But fungicide for 2022, started in excess of 14 months ago trying to secure supply. It has been incredibly challenging. I think the manufacturers have tried like crazy to work through manufacturing hiccups, AI shortages, transportation shortages, labor shortages, and they have tried their best, but mostly what they've done is they've kept us in the loop, and we've made decisions before we know what you as the farmer are interested in. We've had to make some choices much earlier than ever, and forecasting will become even more of a premium as we look forward into 23. Doesn't matter if it's fungicide, whether it's herbicide, whether it's nitrogen or P&K. Forecasting for the future is critical to securing both supply and the competitive price that you desire and expect.
Okay, thanks. All right, so we did launch a new product here in June at the Davenport Tractor Pull, and it's called ExactStrip, and it's about RTK banding. And I'm going to turn it over to our innovation lead, Hov Tinsman, so that he can kind of let everybody know what's coming and what's going to be available for this fall.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Hi, I'm Hov Tinsman. My official title is innovation lead, but I do a lot of the equipment purchasing as well. It kind of goes hand in hand with the hardware and the software that we're putting into our equipment. So I'm gonna share my screen and start this presentation. So yeah, as Katie mentioned, I'm excited to announce that we're launching a new application process called ExactStrip. And this is us putting the fertilizer band that you're used to, but putting it exactly where the seed is going to show up or grow, right where that seed bed is going to be. So it goes right back to the 4 R's, and we're really hitting hard on trying to accomplish the right place. So it also accomplishes feeding the seed, feeding the plant and not the soil. So if you are someone who likes to do a lot of side dress nitrogen and trying to spoon feed that plant so that you can increase your yields, this might be something that you're really interested in. And how this all started was Jake came across an old paper from 2016 that was about strip tilling and placing fertilizer with your strip till bar next to the plant or where that plant row is going to be. And this is what that university paper was showing. It was showing that the closer that you could get that fertilizer band using a strip till bar, the higher yield most likely you'll see in return. And as you can see, all the way at 0 inches away from where that seed is going to show up is where you're seeing the greatest increase. Now, Liqui-Grow does not own any strip till bars or any large tractors to apply this for you, but we have a lot of floaters. And as I mentioned before, we have the dribble banding. So Jake said, what if we just dribbled the fertilizer on top of the soil and got it as close as we can to the seed and where we're going to be planting? And with RTK, we're going to be having that sub-inch accuracy that we're looking for, GPS-wise. Jake also always liked to use the line of, you know, if they can land people on Mars, and we should be able to plant right on top of that or applicate right on top of that seed bed. So we started doing small plot. Go ahead, Jake.
I'm glad that stuck with you. I'll keep using it.
Right. So we started doing small plot trials. And this is exactly what we found last year off of the harvest data. And once again, this is just applying the fertilizer band on top of where the seed is going to be placed. So this was spring and fall application, and then 0 inches away, all the way up to 15 inches away. So as you can see, even just placing the fertilizer on top of the soil, we're still seeing that yield bump. Well, that's great. We can do that in a small plot. So how the hell do we do it across 100 acres? So that is where I started working a lot with Jake, not just during the study, but after the study of, okay, how do we scale it? So that's what we started doing. We started trying to outfit our machines, find the appropriate nozzles to put that fertilizer band the best that we could right where that seed bed is going to be. On the left side, we were following strip till marks. And on the right side, we weren't. We were following where the GPS AB lines for the planter was going to be. And with that, we could try to measure how far off we were from the row that we were trying to applicate sub-inch on. I really want to hit hard on the fact that we were using RTK. If you have never heard of RTK, maybe you need to talk to one of your local John Deere salesmen. RTK is that sub-inch accuracy that I've been talking about. Most people are currently using WAS, which is that 3-foot accuracy. And RTK is a yearly subscription. If you work with John Deere or some of these other larger dealerships, they have their own service that you probably don't have to pay a subscription for since you're buying the machine from them. And what we're doing is we're taking lines, as I mentioned, from your planter or from your R8, R9, and then pulling the lines off of your tractor and your monitors and putting it onto our own machines. With our own machines outfitted with RTK, we shift the lines appropriately so that everything lines up like it should. And then we go ahead and applicate it on the 30-inch on center on the row. Now we're averaging throughout the entire field, we're only averaging about 2.5 inches off of our targeted mark. So to remind you, we're still accomplishing that higher increase in yield.
Hey, Chris, I think you're doing a great job, but I think it's important to mention that, you know, we had to, you in particular, had to play with lots of different nozzles, look at different drop hoses. You know, this is on flat ground, you know, and in good conditions with the right nozzle selection, you know, we can be within that 2.5 inch. On hill ground, you know, steeply sloping ground, the truth is it's not going to be that precise. So just to be clear.
You beat me to the punch a little bit, Jake. So as Jake mentioned, we're going to be sending out different links that you can see exactly that. Not only just the details of the nozzles and how we chose the nozzles video, but also a 3.5-minute video of a GoPro attached to the back end of an interrogator applicating, and you can follow the stream that we're producing exactly on a strip till mark where a farmer had strip tilled. Yes, as Jake mentioned before, when you have certain acreage with large hillsides, this is probably not something you want to be paying for on a hillside, because you're going to still have a lot of implement drift and angles that you're going to have to be fighting against to try to applicate on that band. But even in season, we can still see a difference. So on the left side is our ExactStrips, where we're 0 inches away from the band. And on the right side is our 12 inches away. And I don't know how well you can see the numbers, but on the left side with our ExactStrips, it seems like we're almost a full foot or at least 10 inches taller than being 12 inches away. Now, height doesn't always mean that we're going to be seeing a higher yield, but hopefully that's what we're seeing once again come 2022 harvest. So another very common question is, you know, this is great, but how much are you going to charge me? And right now we're only asking $2 more on top of your current P&K application. So this isn't a $30 application. This isn't a $15 application. It's still under $10.
I have OmniStar. Do I need to get something better?
OmniStar is good. We have applicated on RTX, which is very similar, where you're still sub 3 foot. but you're not at that 1 inch, every time you have more error, just be expecting more error. So instead of averaging 2.5, you might only average 5 inches away from the band. So that's a great question. And what I mean by that, I have a great slide that will show you exactly the difference visually. Let me just pull that right up.
While he's looking for that, some of these RTK videos are on our YouTube channel, so you can always go there.
And so this is what I mean. You're just accepting a little bit more error. Now that doesn't mean that you're not going to you're still not going to achieve that higher yield versus just normal strip banding, but there's just a little bit more. So as I go back to that previous slide that we were talking about, you're still on that uphill trend. But yes, it is something that we can accomplish in a long answer way.
Katie and Chris, I'll also mention, you know, this is kind of the beginnings of this. I mean, yes, we've done the research we've done. Yes, there's some other research that confirms it, but there's lots of questions to be answered still about, you know, are we better off to put this on top of strip till? You know, apply the fertilizer after the strip till operation? Do we apply the fertilizer before the strip till operation? You know, we've done this in different tillage environments, but I need to do more of that to try to answer the question, you know, can you do aggressive tillage after the fertilizer is applied? Is a one-pass tool with light tillage a better approach if you're going to use this? There's lots of questions to answer, way more to come, but we're off to a good start.
And as Jake mentioned, we're still doing a lot of this. We have applicated on about 6,000 to 7,000 acres worth across our whole demographic. And I know there's a lot of farmers out there that have tried this with their own equipment in the past, with machines not lining up. And man, I can never get my strip till machine to be right where the planter is going to be. I can help you with a lot of those questions too. That's all sorts of things that we had to figure out, and different networks and different varieties of error and how we go about that. So get in contact with your salesman, have them give me a call. I can come out, I can meet with any of you. So thanks.
Thanks, Chris, for that update. And once again, that's going to be available for this fall.
Yep.
Okay. So we're right at the 8:42 mark. We're just a couple minutes over. So I'll just go very quickly. I have been the seed and seed treatment manager for the last 4 years. I'm transitioning into a sales and marketing role. But that doesn't mean I don't know anything about seed still. So just so everybody knows what's coming, we've seen input prices go up. We're going to see a lift in the seed prices this year across all of our companies. We're going to do our best to help mitigate some of that, but just know that the prices are on the rise for that. We do have a new Brevant and UAN offered. It's kind of a pair up between the two of them. It came into effect yesterday afternoon. So if you've got any questions on that, ask your salesman. That'll be available till September 30th. And then the last thing, we've been out scouting a lot this year, and we're seeing an increase in corn rootworm pressure across our entire territory. So if you haven't been out already to do any root digs, let your salesman know. We'd love to come out and help you with the root dig so that you make good decisions for this next year's crop and know what to expect going into this fall. The last thing I want to mention is what Hov said a little bit earlier, shipping and supply. So as our vendors ask us to ship stuff in earlier into Q4, we kind of guess what we're going to sell, but for the most part, you know, it's nice if we have an idea of what you'd like to purchase. So once again, if we can make decisions earlier, that's a lot more helpful for us when we do our shipping and supply, but we work through that. So thanks again for, did you guys have anything else you wanted to share?
I wanted to pass on one thing. Appreciate your business, appreciate the time that you give to Liqui-Grow, and we wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for you, and looking forward to helping you in 2023. Forecasting ahead of the time, no matter what the product you're talking about, is ultimately the way that you're going to secure the best price and the best supply.
Chris, Jeff Olson, or somebody said there's a national strip till conference coming up in Iowa City in August. You should probably go to that.
Already have it marked down on my calendar.
That's good. Well, thanks
Thanks a
again
lot for your time.
Thanks again for joining us today. In a world where we are liking to get back together and get, see each other live, this is a nice way for us to be able to offer these resources and their expertise to you. So if this is something you like, please let your salesman know. We can plan another one. If there's anything you'd like to see done differently, we'd love to know that too. Thanks. Have a nice day. Stay cool out there.
Lead Academy,
Liqui-Grow
Excellence
and Agronomy
Development.